Well, let's just briefly take a look at our agenda here, and then we'll dive right into this. I want to begin with what I call grim realities, a little bit of benchmark data about what our experience in the industry is, as probably everybody's been around it for very long knows we run into a lot of issues. But I think it's useful to take a minute and look at some of the available published benchmark information. Then we're going to dive into requirements challenges, and I'm going to focus today on what I think are perhaps the two largest challenges. The first one is the famous, we develop a system and the customer's reaction is, that's not what we wanted. And our reaction is, hey, wait a minute, we met the spec. This is a problem that probably a lot of you run into. I've certainly seen this many, many times over the course of my career. It's very easy for these kinds of misunderstandings to happen. So we're going to talk about some ways that that problem might be averted or at least reduced. And particularly, I want to talk about some things that come from the world of Software Six Sigma that can respond to this issue, can help to minimize it. And also, I want to talk a little bit about some ideas that come from Lean and Agile thinking that also deal with this issue. The second big challenge, I think, is the old, it takes too long, it costs too much. We've probably all heard that song, too. Customers always think we ought to be able to do it for much less than it really takes and do it a lot faster than we really can. So there are some responses in the field to these issues as well, some in the realm of Lean and Agile. We'll talk about those, and also some in the realm of PMBOK, and probably most of you have experienced some tension between those. Sometimes those are seen as oppositional ideas or different ends of a spectrum. I think, though, very frequently there are ways to blend ideas from both camps, if you want to call it that. And then we're going to talk about some ways to right-size requirements elicitation. We know that there's always a tension between, on the one hand, being thorough, which might mean taking a long time to really nail down the requirements, and on the other hand, there's always pressure on, okay, we know what they want, let's get on with it. So we're going to talk about some techniques, some of them new, some of them old, that might be used to help us properly manage the scope of a requirements effort, to reduce the time it takes without giving away a necessary degree of thoroughness. So with that overview, let's just jump right into it. Some grim realities, maybe some of you are familiar. There's a number of published sources, Capers-Jones, the Chaos Reports, a number of others that really have indicated that an average software project overruns its budget by in the order of 100%. We know that software projects that are on time and on budget, so-called, typically deliver something in the realm of 50% of the functionality that was originally promised. And we also probably recognize that very frequently, as we go through a project, we are getting behind and maybe we're over budget. And so one of the things that frequently happens more often than not, is that we begin to drop some of the requirements. We de-scope the project in order to get it done somewhere close to the original budget and the original schedule. And of course what that means is that we've invested time in discovering requirements, maybe doing some design work, possibly even doing some construction work, and in some cases even we've done some testing of some of those requirements. So in other words, we've spent money, we've taken time to work on things that in the end we don't deliver to the customer, or at least we don't deliver them in the original release. We may deliver some of those later on in a second release or a third release, but we didn't deliver them in the original time frame and the original budget. And those kinds of things, those de-scoped requirements, tend to consume between 10 and 15% of total software resources. So in other words, that's a pure form of waste. We've invested effort, but we didn't deliver anything of value, yet we consumed a lot of resource working on things that we really never delivered. I think another grim reality is something on the order of 80% of failed software projects had a totally unrealistic estimate from the very first day. I've done many worked on many turnaround situations, brought into situations where projects were very late and very far over budget, and in most of those cases, certainly 80% of those cases, one of the things I discovered was that the schedule that had originally been established and the estimates that had originally been developed were completely unrealistic. There were no what you might call existence proofs. In other words, no projects of the type and size that we were looking at that had been completed within the original budgets. And it's not at all a rare occurrence. So certainly estimating failures contribute to project cancellations. And canceled projects, and this is based on some data from Capers-Jones, consume about 20% of total software resource. So we spent a lot of time and money building a project or getting part of the way through it. We got so far behind and so far over budget that management said, wait a minute, stop. This isn't making any sense. We're going to cancel this project. So there's a lot of resource that gets wasted on those kinds of situations. Another thing, probably more directly pertinent to our situation today, although these other things are certainly relevant for today's topic as well, but something like 20% of all software defects have their origin in requirements. In other words, the original defect is traced back to a requirement that was missed or a requirement that was misunderstood or incorrectly described. And even make things even worse, only about 77% of those are going to get removed before the product is delivered. Again, that's based on some data from Jones. So what that means is that something on the order of 1/3, 30-odd% of all delivered defects originated in requirements problems, things that were missed and things that were not properly understood are causing 1/3 of the delivered defects. And then make things even worse, the cost to fix those, the requirements defects that we don't discover until after release, is going to be very significantly higher than what it takes to fix other kinds of defects. Code defects, for instance, are much cheaper to fix than requirements defects. Design defects often are less expensive to fix than requirements defects. So requirements defects are a big part of what we deliver, and they're a very expensive and very painful part of what we deliver to the customer. So it's a very important topic. Anything we can do to improve the requirements process is going to, has the potential to pay a substantial dividend and return on whatever investment we make in it. So we're going to focus today on things that we could do that should help this process. So let's first focus on this first big issue. That's not what we wanted. What the customer says versus our view, we met the spec. So first, let's look at why does that happen. And there's a lot of different reasons, and some of them are peculiar to a given situation, but there's some themes that I see again and again. The first one is that we don't get enough time with the people who really know what the requirements are. So they're too busy. They haven't got time for this. They don't think it's their job. Their hair's on fire anyway. They really don't want to devote the necessary time. And usually the root of that is that we didn't really have adequate sponsorship. If the person who wants this project and who's going to pay for it, whoever that may be, the finance department or the marketing department or the manufacturing department or whoever it is, if we don't have adequate executive sponsorship, if we don't have a person who's really willing to step up and make the necessary people available, we're going to have big trouble. So one of the keys to success is to be more